approval. I do not know any changes, any additions, so with that.
Second.
Motion by Bob Johnson, second by Scott. Any discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We move into Mustang Spirit recognition. So, Mr. Nelson.
Ms. Sarah Miller, come on up, please.
All right, I'm going to read something that comes to me from the Mora swim team seniors about our very own coach here, Sarah Miller. Dear school board members, on behalf of the seniors, Sarah Miller has changed our lives. Not only has Sarah, Coach as we call her, taught us everything we know in the pool, but she has also taught us life lessons that we use outside of the pool. She has taught us that self-doubt is the only thing keeping us back from our goals. She taught us that a good mentality through the hardest times can make all the difference. She taught us that failure is not final and success doesn't come easy. She took a team of 13 girls and transformed it into a team of 40. She took a team that was rarely competitive and transformed them into a team with a countless number of wins and even state competitors. She took a group of strangers from different schools and made us teammates, best friends, and most importantly, a family. Coach is one of the greatest blessings in our lives. She has shaped us into the young women we are today, and for that, we are forever grateful. Sincerely, the Mora swim team seniors. So, thank you.
I see some seniors and some state swimmers in the audience. I think that we should have the swim team that's here introduce themselves. And I'm Sarah, on behalf of the board, thank you. And I just think there couldn't have been any better to get a program like this up and running. And congratulations to all of you guys. So just feel free, ladies, you have the floor. So if you'd like to introduce yourselves, that'd be great. And say anything you would like about Coach Miller or the season or the whole program. How old is the program? Stopped you right away. No, I didn't mean to, but it's not
Mora program.
7 years. 7 years.
She's 1 year before us.
Yeah. And Sarah's been with us the whole.
So I wrote down some stuff. You want me to
You
read
guys
it
have the
first,
floor.
and that's a great segue for them.
Go.
Okay. So this year they broke 9 school records. There's only 11, along with 4 pool records. They hold pool records in 3 pools: Malacca, Staples, Motley, and Ogilvie. This year was the first time that everyone on the record board shows pool records that are within the past 2 years. The team sent 13 girls to sections and 2 girls to state. And there were a lot of firsts for this team this year. Our diver, Taya Anderson, placed top 16 at sections for diving. Jenna placed 5th at the state meet for backstroke, which is the highest Ole Miss T swimmer to ever place. She brought our team total to 18 points, placing our team total at 26 out of 47. We received the gold award, which they don't know. They received the gold award for the highest GPA of 3.87. This is the highest in their section. And they are the top 8 highest GPA in the state.
You guys are amazing.
Wow. And then there were 2 swimmers that were nominated to be on the ballot this year for the Swimmer of the Year. And this is the first for Ole Miss T swimmers. They have to be nominated by opposing teams. So that was really cool that 2 of them got nominated as well. Even though we're losing 8 seniors, they built a great foundation for these younger girls to continue to grow. So super proud of them.
Take it away. Well, I'm Jenna Williams, and I've been swimming for 8 years, and Sarah's been my coach for almost all of them, right? Yeah, almost all of them. And she's taught me almost how to be a good teammate and a good sportsman, like have good sportsmanship everywhere. And I'm just gonna carry it with that me all the time.
I'm Madison Wren. I've been swimming for 5 years. I don't know, swimming was really fun. I started in volleyball and I didn't really like that much, but I really like swimming, so yeah.
I'm Jen Woods. I've been swimming only for 3 years, but I did the same thing. I was in volleyball and then switched to swimming, and coach kind of just took it from there and shaped me to be the swimmer and person I am today.
I'm Leah. I've been swimming since 7th grade, so 6 years. Yeah, that's a long time. And I think the main thing I took away from a coach is like, I was kind of a baby in 7th grade, and I was really whiny all the time, and like I was not very tough. And so now that I'm a senior, I can do a lot more things, and I'm a lot less scared of things. So that's cool.
I'm Sage Wren. I've been swimming since 3rd grade, and coach has been the coach for me for like a really long time. And let's just say I'm not the biggest fan of actual swimming, but coach and my team makes it worth it being part of the team, and I'll miss it just for those reasons.
I'm Olivia. I'm from Ogilvy. So it's really cool to see how over the past 6 years, not only like the Mora girls have become best friends, but also the girls from Ogilvy. And you can't really get that with any other sport in Ogilvy. So it's really cool to see. I mean, these are basically my best friends and stuff like that. So, and like coaches impacted me probably the most out of all my coaches. And it's really cool to see how the blend really works between Ogilvy and Mora, and just like all the friendships everybody's made. So, and coach has definitely helped with that, and she's really impacted her team a lot. So, and me as well.
Thank you. First of all, congratulations on the Mustang Spirit. Congratulations on your season, ladies, and we're so happy you're here tonight, and just keep it going. Who could have guessed that the program would mesh like it has or become what it is in the time that we've had it, so.
As a parent,
You can speak.
so 8 years ago, I went to Ogilvy and told them how to grow their swim program, okay? Then I was like, had to get coach to coach, so I worked on that. And it's the best thing ever because, it sums it all up by 9th grade confirmation, going around the thing, and they're like, who influences you the most in your life? Most kids are like, my mom, my dad, my grandma, my nana. You get to stage and she goes, coach. And I'm standing right next to her. So, she understands how much she affects their lives, and it's hard for the kids to maybe articulate it, but.
I think they articulated it well, so.
So, and the program is what it is today, not only because of coach, but because of these 6 girls standing up here.
Yeah.
And it's really exciting because there's a lot of young talent coming up, so.
Yeah, it's cool to see you all hanging out. I mean, there's no boundaries. Everybody is one, and that's just amazing. So keep it up. All right, thank you. All right. On to like Brenda's coming up to get in on your Mustang Spirit.
Well, and what you might not know is she's a mom, a wife, kindergarten teacher, a coach, and she's finishing her doctorate. So pretty soon she'll have that too. So she's a very busy lady and she does it all very well. Yeah. So we have our Mustang Spirit, and what we wanted to do is honor our social workers at this school. So Stacy Kunke and Sarah Rosso, who's here. Yeah, come on. So they do just an outstanding job of basically the backbone of many of our things at the school. They do our social emotional learning for the teachers. They give them lessons. Today I watched Sarah in the classroom, in one of our first grade classrooms, do a lesson. And you should have seen the kids. I mean, she's very dramatic and animated, and they just hang on her every word, and she just does a really terrific job with our littles. For me, she is a lot of support. When Randy and I are out of the building for any reason, they step up, they help out, they investigate, they're a go-to. So we thank you for that too. She makes connections with all of the outside agencies. She brings them in. She has done the food. You want to talk about the food?
Yeah, so we had the food shelf at the high school, which is awesome, but I felt like we were missing some kids. And I knew that a lot of our littles were responsible for their own food sometimes over the weekend because of the way their parents' work schedules worked. And also that they weren't eating at all over the weekend because they would come to school really hungry on Monday. And so we decided to give it a try. And we started out sending home bags of food to about 30 kids the first year. I think it went up to about 40 last year. Last year was our first year. And this year we're at around 69 to 75. We've been fluctuating with some mobility, but so 75 kids go home with food over the weekend, which was a dream of mine for a long time since transitioning to elementary school.
And it's a lot of work. She works a lot outside of her normal duties to get all this stuff accomplished. So we just couldn't do the school without these two, and so we just wanted to honor
Stacey's
you guys.
giving blood, just so you know, that's why she couldn't be here. That speaks to her character.
They did a pint a day, I think.
Yeah,
Also working closely with the attendants and the other food baskets that we prepare for families during holidays. They coordinate all of those events as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could just add to that, one quick email to Miss Rosso there, one late evening, and I was responded back to immediately the following morning at 7:30 a.m. I just said, my child needs some help. Where do I go? What do I do? Within 2 hours, we had it all set up. It was absolutely phenomenal, and I can't thank you and Stacey enough for that kind of stuff, because it's really important when us parents have no idea where to go next or what to do. You guys are just right there and leading us the way to the resources that we need to help our little people, so thank you.
Half the board thanks Sarah, Stacy, and all of our social workers, both the district, so appreciate it. All right, any other Mustang spirit at this time? We will move on then to our first open forum. This is your opportunity to address the board. Would anybody like to make public comment this time? Seeing none, we will move on then to the presentation of the 2018-19 financial audit. And we have here tonight as well as Tammy, our finance manager.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I'm Carl Nordquist from Althoff and Nordquist. First of all, I'd like to thank you for choosing our firm for this year's annual audit. I'd like to just briefly go over the basic financial statements, the bigger of the two. Are there any questions before I start? That's the first place I'd like to take you is to page number 4. Under the heading of opinions. Is, in our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly in all material respects with respect to the financial position, the governmental activities, the business type, each major fund, and a variety of sentences after that. This is basically considered a clean audit opinion. We did not have any findings or any issues that we had to report to anybody, had to talk to anybody in particular if there's anything was going on. So that's considered a good opinion. And then on the next several pages, going through to about page 13, this would be the management discussion and analysis. This is written from the viewpoint of management to the readers of the financial statements to give them a broad overview of what's going on within the district itself. In particular, on page 12, the factors bearing on the district's future. This gives you an idea of some things that are coming towards or is happening to the district at this time or what may be coming in the future. Just to give everybody an idea of what's happening. Then on pages 17, 18, and 19, this would be the statement of net position and the statement of activities. One of the things I wanted to point out, first of all, if we go and look at pages 18 and 19, over on the far right-hand columns, where it says 2019 and 2018, you'll notice that the negative number of 11 million, right next to it is a negative number of 35 million. And what's been going on this year? This is, again, as you recall from last year, the pension plan had a huge loss, basically, and all the pension liabilities skyrocketed. Well, now, of course, it's gone exactly the opposite direction this year. So now it's come back down. So now you basically had a non-cash, non-book revenue because of the change in pension. That's why there's such a difference there. So if you go over to page 17 then, and you can see that when you start to look at a few of the numbers, right about the top third of the page it says deferred outflows. Last year was 3.8 million. This year it's 496,000. The net pension liability last year was 33 million. This year it's 12 million. That alone is a pretty sizable change. And then there was also a change in deferred inflows as well related to pensions. But I just thought I'd better point that again, that is one of those situations where the district in and of itself has no control over the money. What happens with the pensions, whether it goes up or down, whether they change their discount rates or not, that's all done at the TRA or PERA board. They take care of all of that. And this year, as you will, I'll stop when we get to it, you'll see the sheets and the supplementary information. It was primarily the TRA that changed so much this year. They effectively changed their discount rates, which in turn lowered the outgoing pensions, or what was going to be paid out, lowered the liability a little bit. And then of course, also at the same time, buried in the footnotes for the pension plans, you would see that the state of Minnesota also put in another $16 or so million as a supplementary contribution from the state of Minnesota. So that, all of that kind of stuff has an effect on those numbers. One of the things we do is when we're here doing the audit, we check to make sure that all the pension plan payments were made on time and in a timely manner and in the right amounts. And it was done that way every single month, is one of the things we test. Especially in light of the fact that you have no control over the actual result of the numbers. So we make sure the actual payment done by the school district itself is taken care of and on time. Any questions? Then going on pages 20 and 21, this would be the governmental funds, the balance sheet of the governmental funds. There's a couple of items I just wanted to point out here. I've been asked this question, obviously, more than once over the last several months. First of all, let's look at page 24. At the fund balance for the general fund, the ending fund balance this year is at $4.9 million. Generally, when you think of a school district or a city of that, for that matter, you look at the general fund because that's the one that pays most, if not vast majority of expenditures. Compare that to their expenses. So when you take the 4.9 million and divide that by the 19 million from the total expenditures, that comes to about 25%. So that means that the district effectively has enough money to cover its expenses for about 3.5, 4 months, and that's it. And they're out of money. That's just the way it works, and it does really work that way that fast. Especially in light of the fact that when you start to look at the expenditures and dig into them in the rest of the book, you would see that the vast majority of it is payroll, and always has been. So then when I go back to page 20, to try to bring some of the numbers a little more in perspective, that 4.9 million for the fund balance is at 25% of the expenditures. But the actual money you have available to spend, per se, is the unassigned. So the unassigned actually is only 18.8% of the total. Now, when the state is looking at the fund balance and whether or not it's considered healthy, they would look at the 4.9. But when you're looking at future expenses and what you're going to have to pay for what you have to use, the 3.8 is the one you're using. So actually you have less than 20% of your total expenditures over the course of the next fiscal year. So that's also a way to look at it. So occasionally, so that, because I got this question from a number of people. I don't know that they necessarily agreed with the answer, but that's a different issue. At the top of the page there, under general, it says you have $6.2 million. It also says your total liabilities right now is $2.2 million. So when you think about it, you have $6 million, you take off a couple $1 million for your liabilities, now we're down to 4. Now we're getting real close to that $3.6 million there. That's all you actually have to spend. Then the next question was, what about all these other funds? And I had to point out to them, much to their consternation, those other funds are effectively irrelevant. Because you cannot, as you know as the board, you cannot spend any of that money on anything else except what the fund is specifically there for, such as debt service. You can't just buy something, you actually have to make debt payments for that, and only that. And since the odds that most school districts ever have actually never had any debt service fund, that money will be in there until the end of time. And then, of course, as you know, most bonds are levied for or assessed in some way, so the money you receive is there to pay the bond off, so you really don't have any money left over when you're done. So I did have a number of those questions, so I just thought I'd touch upon that while I was standing here.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So any advice for us who may have, since they also don't believe a CPA in the future, you can tell us how to approach those questions.
I'll help you out in any way I can.
That would be nice.
It's
It's a
governmental accounting and how the money is set up in school districts and the cities in itself is a very difficult thing to explain. Mainly because a lot of people don't understand. As an example today, I did a much smaller school district. The revenues for the general fund were 142 rows in the Excel file. The expenditures were 1,770 or something like that. That's the expenditure rows in an Excel file. For a lot of people, they don't understand that. As you know, all the different programs, you can only spend a certain amount of money that you get in those programs alone. That's it. You can't spend it anywhere else. Such as when you think of the Department of Education money or any money you might be receiving from the federal government says if you receive money for Title I, you can only spend it in Title I. And then if you want to buy something, you have to ask them, one, if it's okay, and two, you have to budget for it, and most likely will say no. And that's just the way it works. It's same way with food service. If you want to buy, in particular, if you want to buy something, a new oven, new stove, or whatever the case, you have to ask if it's okay. Even if you have a positive fund balance, you still have to get the request in to make sure it's okay. So it gets rather complicated. And it's, as a lot of folks that might own a business, if they want something and they have the money, they just go buy it. That's not quite the way it works in a governmental situation. So.
Or if you have cash in the bank, you should be earning 7% interest instead of 0.5 or 1.
There are different cash things you can do, however, they sometimes can get cumbersome. I do know what a lot of cities and school districts are doing now is they're putting money with the state of Minnesota, and they just use it like a revolving savings account. So whenever they need money, they basically have one account. Well, that's what most school districts have anyway, one checking account. And then every time they need to have money, they just make a transfer back and forth. But even then, you're not earning that much more, if anything. And most school districts, up to and including Mora, does the same thing. Try and earn as much money in interest as they can, because it's in your best interest. And that's also why school districts and cities at the same time will also do bond refundings. We'll turn around and do a bond refunding in the attempt to save money on the back door for the interest costs, even though on the front door you might have to throw $15,000 or something towards dollars or something like that, but you end up saving yourself $75,000 in interest expense over the next several years. So
And Tammy and I do watch that very closely.
Yes.
In front of your board package, you can see the investments. In the regular packet, it's there every month, and you can see what those interest rates are.
The one thing that's nice about the state of Minnesota now, this is from an auditor's point of view, for many years, everybody used to, you'd go through the bank, and then they would put money in another bank for a CD, for a 6-month, 1 year, 2 year CD. Well, then they'd end up having 30, 40 CDs all over the place. So I really like the Minnesota fund now, because that's a lot easier to look at. I don't have to look at every single CD, make sure and keep track of them. That's always fun. And that's also the other side of it. That's really hard for the district to keep track of. So having the Minnesota there to take care of that is actually a benefit. So.
And when we get to the work packet, I'll go over a little bit more, but you actually have the MSDLA interest rate in there as well. I'll show you what that is.
And Carl, it is correct that also you're understanding that any of our investments, or I should say our one account, that we have one account, not including the 19,000 the other checking, they have to be in backed funds. I mean, they can't be put into some sort of a stock fund or mutual, something where you can gain it. It has to be guaranteed rate funds available in.
Well, I chuckled over because I said earlier it was a clean opinion. If you did that, that would be an adverse opinion.
Exactly. So
the primary reason for that is, and of course the state of Minnesota itself on the legal side, they have definite hardcore specific rules about that. The stock funds and stuff like that, you're not allowed to do that at all. And then at the same time, as you mentioned, a lot of folks don't realize that when you have money, we'll say at First Citizens Bank or at Neighborhood, it doesn't make any difference which. If it exceeds the FDIC insurance, they're required to maintain a level of collateral. Well, that actually costs the bank money. That costs them money to do that. So they would prefer that you didn't do that. And now what's happened, I've seen in a number of cities, that the banks, what they want to do is they want to conglomerate with other banks. And now I have to find out, I actually have an email to the state auditor to make sure that's okay. So what they're doing is they're putting money in one bank, spreading it amongst 5, and just calling it one account. I'm not sure if the state auditor would think that's accurate. Well, not the state auditor, rather, excuse me, the legal side. That's where I have the email up to, just to make sure that that's okay. But that is always a concern, because then you have to make sure that, as you mentioned, the stock funds and stuff, that the public money is secure and safe at all times.
Right, it has to be filed with something that's FDIC insured.
Yes. And then, so therefore, what happens when you put money in of course, several different investment places are evading my name in my mind at the moment, but they're not FDIC insured. So it's not, and we would call that to question right away. That would be a finding, and we'd have to talk about it. It would be ugly. It's just not good. Yeah, so. And that is not the issue with Mora. Mora is doing just a fine job, didn't it? Like I said before, it didn't have any findings or issues. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, when we talked about the pension, if you look at page 26 during the reconciliation there, about the middle of the page, it says pension-related items, GASB 68. You'll see it was negative 20 million last year, and it's a positive 10 million this year. So that gives you an idea of what the big swing in the pension expense. Then the next couple of pages are just a couple of smaller funds, in particular the proprietary type fund, which is classified as an internal service fund, and then there's also an agency fund on page 31. Okay, then starting on page 33, running through several pages after that are the notes of the financial statements. A couple of notes I'd just like to point out real quick. Starting on page 42, running all the way through page 44 would be the long-term debt footnote. Just kind of gives you an idea of the overall long-term debt. In particular, in the middle of page 43, it gives you the principal and interest payments for the next 5 years and then 5-year increments following that. Okay, then a couple pages after that will be note number 6, which is the capital assets. Just to give you an idea what the additions and deletions were during the course of the year.
One thing I'd like to just bring to your attention on page 43, at the top, under long-term debt, where it says balance 6/30/19, which would be the end of last year. You can see there what the total is that is our total long-term debt. So if you think about the fact that we did $30 million worth of construction between the elementary school and the wellness center, because of the lease, the long-term lease and the naming rights with the hospital, along with some of the other things that we have done that have been very financially beneficial for the district. You can see then that the total balance, and that includes our equipment loans, and those are the loans that we have on the one-to-one devices also, is $20,485,000. So if you think about that, we've done $30 million worth of construction, and we're at approximately $20 million in debt still against that. So if you hear that out there, well, they must still owe 25, 30 million on that. That's not the case either.
Okay, then of course, a couple pages later, let's see, trying to find the beginning of it here, it's so long. Starting on page 48 and running through several pages after that. This would be the footnote having to do with the pension plan. And a couple items I'd just like to have you look at. It's on page 53. This is for TRA. Right now, there's a sensitivity of net pension liability near the bottom of the page there on Part G. I just wanted to point out, so as the current discount rate is at 7.5%, so the long-term liability is at 9.7. So if the interest rate suddenly goes up to 8.5%, or the discount rate as they call it, then that long-term liability you drop all the way down to $5 million. Versus if it goes the other way, it pops all the way back up to 15.5 million. It just gives you an idea how the future net pension liability is really seriously affected by their discount rate. And I say discount rate instead of interest rate because what they're really doing is projecting into the future based on what they think the average return will be at 7.5%, and they got that's actuarial analysis and well beyond my expertise or desire. So, I may like numbers, but not that much.
And the history of it is that when interest rates were low, then all of a sudden the obligation looked really big. You talked about that a couple of years ago. And the rates went up, so the obligation looked smaller.
And just so you know too, now I'm not expecting the volatility to end anytime soon. And I'm sure if you looked at the roll of the school district, you'd start to see what I'm talking about, or you probably have already noticed it. In my world, the CPAs are expecting 75% of all the managing partners of CPA firms across the United States to be retired in the next 15 years. That's a lot. And I'm expecting kind of the same thing all the way across the board. A lot of schools, a lot of cities, a lot of people are going to start retiring. The interesting part about that is somebody comes on today who's 21 years old, that is one big, brand new liability that's going to be actually bigger than you think it would be. It'll actually be larger than the person who just retired, because they're going to project from their starting working today, and they're going to work here for another 30 years before they retire. Or probably by then another 50 years. I mean, who knows what they'll do. But I mean, so that just gives you an idea. So I suspect there'll still be quite a bit of volatility in the change of the pension plan just because of demographics, if for no other reason. And then on page 58, this would be the sensitivity analysis for PERA. Obviously, that number's not as big as the TRA, but it does still shows you what happens when the interest rates change ever so well. Then the next item, I was going to stop here. And then on 68 and 69, it just gives you a layout of what the pension plan and everything's going on with that. As you can see, the proportionate share of the liability for TRA on page 68 last year, well, 2 years ago, it was 36 million, then it was 30 million, then it came 9.7 million. They did change a few things in their, over the last couple of years, doing how they're calculating everything. So then on page 70 and 71 and 72, this would be the budget to actual for the general fund. And a couple items I just wanted to point out here. You'll notice at the bottom of page 70, it says that you came in over budget on revenue by $776,000. So it was 4.8% of the budget, which first of all, in budgeting world, anything under 5 or 6% variance is actually considered really good. But I wanted to point this out because on the next page, the expenditures came in at $601,000 over budget, basically, and that's 3.1%. Again, very good budget. The other item that you don't notice in here is because of all the pension stuff, they started this last year, and it's a GASB 68 adjustment, an actual accounting adjustment you have to do. It actually goes in the books. And the funny part about it, or sad, depending on how you look at it, you debit revenue and credit expense. So effectively, it's a wash. It does not affect your fund balance. However, it does affect your revenue, does affect your expenses. That adjustment was around $400,000. So actually, I had to make it, debit to expenditure and credit revenue using accounting jargon. But so you can see that that would be enough to throw that revenue and expense number a little bit higher than it needed to be. And there's no way to anticipate or plan for that. Next year, that number could be double, or it could be less than half. It all depends what happens with the pensions in total. And that is directly related to the pensions. And it has to do with the money you've already paid in and the money you're going to be paying in before the year end. They're making the pension stuff a little more complicated. Is what's going on there. Then there's a number of reports and funds and stuff in here after that. You do have a couple items I need to point out. Starting on page 86, this would be the schedule of expenditures for federal awards. And this is all the federal money broken down by different CFDA numbers, which would be the catalog for federal domestic assistance, is what the CFDA number is. You can see that for the total child nutrition cluster, it was 409,000. Title I was 334. The total U.S. Department of Education was 460, and then a couple of other odds and ends, for a total of 875. Because the money is over 750,000, that also makes the school district fall under the single audit requirements. So then, of course, they have to do extra testing and stuff like that to make sure. Then it creates this little footnote, or excuse me, note to the schedule of expenditure awards, and then an extra letter, which would be found on page 91. This is the independent auditor's report on compliance for each major fund and on internal control. And then lastly for that would be on page 93. This is just a schedule of findings and question costs. We did not have any findings or any question costs. And this year, the child nutrition cluster was considered the major program. So that's the information related to that. And lastly, on page 94, this is just what they consider the UFARS compliance table. Basically, this is the information coming from the audit report versus what UFARS is telling us. That is the accounting system that's used at the state level to keep track of all the funds. Have any of you ever seen what one of the account codes looks like? The general expenditure or revenue account code is 17 digits. And scary enough, I actually know a few of them.
And it's amazing. Tammy has to, when she codes everything that breaks down all the way from building to high school, elementary to, there's a code for girls basketball, there's a code for boys basketball. Everything is tracked all the way through. It's unbelievable.
So once in a while I get the question that has to do with, if you look up at the top of that page there, where it says the revenue's off by $1 and the non-spendable fund balance is off by $1 or something like that. That's just a rounding issue. When the state of Minnesota first started doing this, they would actually call us, everybody, not just us, because it was off by $1. Well, anybody who does financial statements knows that no matter what happens, you're gonna have to do a rounding in there somewhere to get the fund balances to come out to where you want, where they need, where they're supposed to be. So the question becomes, when you have three numbers in a row, it's $1.48, $1.48, and $1.48, what is that number? Some people would say it's 4, others would say it's 5. It all depends how you know. So that's why you get the rounding thing. And why you don't want these things to be to the penny. Any questions?
I got one, Carl. At one point, you said that we basically had a 25% surplus around.
No, that's not a surplus.
And you said it was down to 18 because there was about 7%
Okay.
that actually
Well,
was
let me,
accounted for.
yeah, let me go.
Did I understand that right?
Right, let me go through that again. That would be on page 20. It is not a surplus. The school district of Mora has no surplus funds. That fund balance that I was talking about, that 4.9 million, that's 25.6% of your annual expenditures. That effectively means you have about 4 months of money to cover expenditures. If nothing else came in, you could last for 4 months. And then I pointed out, when you sit down and look at it, is actually less than that, because well, the money you could really spend on just about anything would be the 3.6 million. And that's only 18.8%, so it's even less than 4 months, it's closer to about 3. So that just gives you an idea that without the, and the hard part about that to realize is when you're sitting about April or May, the school district's almost broke. Every school district is, because they haven't gotten the first tax payment yet. And that's kind of, that's a big deal. That first tax payment is like, yahoo, we're getting a little close here. And then you get the second tax payment, right? And you actually usually get 3. You get the third one per se for the previous year in January. That's never usually, I say it euphemistically, when it's 400,000 or 500,000, that's really not that much money. When you're talking 4 or 5 million, now you're talking some money. When it comes to a district this size. Generally, the revenues and such that you generate during the course of the year for a variety of events are never going to be enough to cover all the expenses. So that's why it's such a big deal to be concerned about what that percentage is compared to your total expenditures. Generally, in the state of Minnesota, fully believes that if you get underneath 20% of that first number, where I said 25,
Okay.
right? When that number gets under 20%, they believe that a district and/or city will start to have trouble at some point down the road during the course of the year. So this is actually what I would consider quality money management, keeping this number right where it's supposed to be, where it needs to be, and then you also
So
have
18% is a good number to be at.
no, the 25, that 4.9 million, that's the one.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you understand that there's a difference between those numbers. You don't necessarily have the ability to spend the rest of that because you have 1 million of it is restricted. Another 163 is basically non-spendable. And that's for a variety of reasons. We're talking inventory, prepaid expenses, and items like that. That is part of your fund balance because it's considered an asset, but it's not money you can actually spend because it's already tied up somewhere else. Right.
Perfect, thank you.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So then on to the management trend letter. Just wanted to touch on a couple items here. On page 2, you can see the total resident ADM and the total resident ADM served. It has been, it's kind of gone up and down a little bit over the last 5 years. Overall, though, I would say in the grand scheme of things, because I did happen to look at a chart I had at the office, it's been staying pretty steady. A lot of it has to do with the change in demographics, people moving, people coming in. So, but I think overall, the school district's doing really well. Then on page 4, this gives you an idea of what the general fund has been doing now over the last several years as far as revenue and expenditures go, and then what the fund balance has been. And then the other item would be on page 5. This is what I point out all the time on the fund balance versus cash on page 5. Cash and fund balance are not the same thing. Just because you have more cash than the fund balance does not mean you have more cash. As I mentioned, you had the $6 million in cash, $2.2 million in liabilities, so that means that's almost even with what it is already. So that's why you have excess cash. You still have some stuff you have to pay, salaries payable, payroll taxes payable, stuff like that. So. Okay. So there again, are there any questions? Again, I'd like to thank you for choosing our firm. We do appreciate it. If after further review or reading you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Okay.
Thank you, and thank you for being so thorough and easy to understand all these things. Also, like just a minute, thank Craig and Tam for their diligence and year over year, it's sort of moves that we get as a board, and it's great to be able to have such a confidence.
Well, just a couple of those questions, just a little follow-up on some of those questions on page 4 of that last little booklet that we're looking at. Carl mentioned a few numbers that we have prided ourselves with being within 1% to 2% in the past. But if you take a look at that sale of assets of $804,000, if you remember, we sold Fairview, which threw off the revenue significantly. And then also in the middle of the page there where we have the LTFM, we are sitting on some of that long-term facility maintenance money. And so I'll bring that up a little bit more in my report of what and how we'd like to move forward with our facility issues. And so if you take a look at that and pull that out of there, that pulls those numbers of 3 and 4% down much closer, as well as we do have an intention of spending down that 25% number back down into that 21, 22% because of that additional facility project that we did up at the Fairview, or the Fairview property that will be paid for during this school year. Also to point out, in that fund balance, Tammy, I think you might have those numbers. We have some carryover on the Q count, which I think is about 100,000 or a little better.
It's a little better than that for this year. We put an additional 67 in there that wasn't spent.
Yep.
As projected.
Yep, so there was some carryover money, so those are assigned like Carl had mentioned. Those fit into some of those assigned categories that, even though they might be in the general fund, we still can't spend those on other things because they have been identified for specific purposes.
Is that going to be typical that the Q-Comp fund balance will fluctuate like that, or there will be?
Well, I think the Q-Comp program is relatively new, and we're still trying to get a good balance on that so that we spend it, but we don't overspend it. And maybe I'm a little conservative and have passed that along to the teaching staff as well, but as we work through that process, we don't want to overspend. So we'll get a better handle on that.
There's when we budget for the Q-Comp budget, teachers are compensated for things like meeting certain goals, attending a certain percentage of your PLC meetings, how we do on our MCA scores, and if we meet those goals. We have to assume when we do the budget that every teacher is going to meet all of those qualifications for the stipends, but we haven't yet all met all of those qualifications for all of the stipends. So we have to assume that everybody will meet it, because if everybody did and then we didn't, we would be overspending, but because.
Maybe won't.
But it just so hasn't happened yet that we've had to pay out the full amount that we budgeted, because no year have we had everybody meet all of their goals.
And thanks for clarifying that. It's
Yeah.
kind of where I was going, but I didn't want to make that assumption, but it makes perfect sense, so. Explain your overage. Anything else, Kurt?
Nope, that's, just wanted to point those, things out.
Anybody have any questions that have come to mind related to any of his comments or anything that Carl presented? Okay, again, thank you, and, we do need a motion to approve the 2018-19 financial audit as presented.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Ethan, second by Tammy. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Carl.
Carl.
Thank you.
And Tammy.
Oh, especially. He does a great job.
All right. Next is the consent agenda. Any requests to remove any items? If not, motion to approve is in order.
So,
Motion by Scott, second Ethan. Any discussion? We have a couple of gifts, donations for October. Tim Mortensen, Mary Ellen Becker, $1,000 for scholarship, Mora Education Foundation, a couple of one mini grant for $100. And it's a gift for gifts and donations, so, we acknowledge those with thanks. If there is no further discussion, all in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
I would just point out on the investments page that I mentioned earlier.
Oh, sorry, yes.
If you take a look at the second page in your packet, the high-fi money market that First Citizens we do have with them, that's, as Scott has called it, a dump account. That's where all of our money goes into, and then we send it out from there. And then if you take a look specifically at the Neighborhood National Bank, we do have 18,000 in there. You can see what that interest rate is, and then you can see what the MSDLAF, Minnesota School District Liquid Asset Fund, as Carl had mentioned earlier, a number of districts have gone to that. We do maintain a small amount of money in there, so we can track that interest rate as well. And you can see that the local rate that we're getting from First Citizens is much better than either one of the other two. And as I said, we do constantly, we do watch that, and we do make sure that we're getting the best return on the dollars that we do have in here. So I just wanted to point that out. If you have any questions, that's in front of the packet on a monthly basis.
and to be clear, Craig, the 7.215 million, that's all the money we got as of, that's it. There's no other accounts that we have, correct?
We have a couple $100,000 left from the building bond.
Okay.
That's in a separate piece, so it goes towards the payment of the
Yeah.
tennis courts, but other than that, everything is.
Yeah, there would be then also our payroll checking account, which maintains a minimum balance.
Yeah.
And then
But this, the payroll account generally sweeps out of this
Yeah.
and into that.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I meant, they're just saying, there's certainly gonna be trickling here or there, whatever, some different things, but the 7.2 certainly represents, there's not another 10 million or 5 million or, you know.
Right.
There's, yeah, the other things specifically set aside, the tennis courts, yep, we put that.
Yeah, that's part of
aside.
the building bond, that was a
Correct.
completely separate account.
Yep, I just wanted, I knew that, I just wanted to make sure that,
Yep.
that it was clear, you know.
And as you saw in there, when you mentioned the assets and liabilities, there's outstanding payroll, there's all those various components that make up that dollar number, so.
Plus the need for $7 million figure to do business and cash flow. So, thank you, Craig. I'm sorry. We had under discussion, did we vote?
Yes.
Thank you. We'll move on. Item number 9 on the agenda is consider adopting the resolution establishing a compliant polling place for certain amount of precincts, designating hours. Bottom line is to designate the polling place, for elections like the special school bond referendum that we just held, and, if need be, that has been approved to hold those at City Hall. And this will be an annual consideration to approve that as our polling place in the event we need to hold a special election. Has to be done by December 31st every year? For the
Prior to
following year?
January 1st.
Prior to
That was a
January 1st.
legislative change from just a couple of years ago. The recommendation from the Minnesota School Board Association is to identify a place, get that request in place in case that you decide to do it for next year.
And City Hall, I believe, has been approached and has agreed to allow us to use.
It was approved that Thursday, Tuesday, November 14th meeting, or 19th.
Excellent. Approved by the City Council, thank you. So, a motion to approve that or to move that resolution. So moved.
Second.
Motion by Tammy, second by Scott. Any further discussion?
Do want to, point out again is, it, as required by statute, it's just an ongoing statutory thing. And it also has to be held at an existing polling location. It can't be at another different site.
And this is the biggest one.
And this is the biggest one in Canadian County, so, again, just to get all that stuff on the record, saying this is why.
Thank you, Scott.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
All right, I believe this does require a roll call vote, so Bob Jensen.
Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously with 5 voting in favor, 0 opposed, and 1 board member absent, so, thank you. Board reports and administrative updates. Any board members wish to report on meetings? Bob, no,
I'll go,
first.
we had a board advisory meeting last Monday. Most of the administration wasn't there. So it would have been a short meeting, but the board, or the members on that committee, wanted to talk about the referendum. They all have differences of opinions of when to do it, but they wanted for sure to make mention that they wanted another referendum, but there was a lot of discussion by almost everybody having a different opinion on when and maybe possibly how to do it. So I know that staff was there taking notes, so.
Was it well attended? I wasn't there, so sorry.
What was
Talking
there,
about
8 of us
6
there?
people,
Board advisory committee members.
We had quite a few committee members, like Bob said, a lot of the administration was up for meetings.
Yeah.
I guess I was more interested in community members or people that weighed in on the
Yeah.
referendum. Are you talking several or 10? Or
Yeah, I'd say 8 to 10, yeah, and they were all very positive about it. Like I said, there was a lot of different angles and different opinions. Then, had a rubber, board meeting, basically there, since Cambridge backed out, there was a settlement made because they were part of the co-op, so, we approved a settlement that the superintendents all agreed to at a prior meeting, and the board concurred that would be the way to end that relationship, so that was taken care of in that meeting. Those are my 2 reports.
Board members? If not, we'll move on to Jen with the student board member report.
So on the 5th of November, 6th of November, we had our first blood drive. We were able to donate 49 viable units of blood to the American Red Cross. That was our first one of the year. We have another one in March and then again in June. So we're hoping to up our numbers for the next one, up as much as possible. We are running a holiday toy and food drive as well. That will be coming up next week into the first week of December.
we will take the money and the food and donate it to food shelves and toys for Tots,
Whatever it's called.
whatever the toys.
Oh, reference to a Toys for Tots on
Yeah.
Facebook.
I think sometimes it's been called Gifts for Kids.
Yeah.
So
Whatever,
towards one
the
of
local
those.
one.
Yes.
Anyway.
Yep. Just as a student perspective, the corral opened up in October, so it's been very interesting and unique to see how it's just flourished over the past few months. To every class you walk in, 5 to 10 people come in with their drinks from the corral, and it's like, oh, I gotta run down there quick. Let me grab a smoothie, and everyone's talking about how excited we are for the new flavor for whatever day it is today. So that's a very fun thing to see. So I think that's all I have to report for now.
Next edition. Okay, thanks, Jim. Buildings and grounds transportation.
We're getting ready for winter, whether you like it or not. So we had ordered a new snow brush for our John Deere. We got 5 pounds of sidewalk salt. We're just getting ready to go. Excuse me. The boilers the new boilers at the elementary school malfunctioned a few weeks ago. So it kind of got cool there for a little bit. So we called the contractor. Of course, it's out of warranty, but they were able to fix it, find the problem, and they actually tuned it up for us. So we got it up and going, and we're in the process of getting a rebate for that boiler as well for that tune-up. So it costs us a little money, but we'll get some back. Transportation, we're concentrating. I mean, it's been a nice lull now with the fall sports winding up. We're winding down, and now we're getting ready for the winter activities. One thing we're going to do coming up next week or so is go through our fleet with our camera system. So every once in a while we have an incident on a bus where we need to look at a camera, and every once in a while it doesn't work that day. And then we have to tell parents, sorry, we don't know, we're just trying to investigate, whatever. And so we made a decision to just call the actual company, and they're going to come and do an on-site full fleet assessment and get everything, new hard drives and cameras replaced and whatever we need to do. Because that's it's pretty important, not only for student safety, but for the drivers as well. So that's kind of the big thing coming up with that. If you have any other questions on my report, let me know.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Community, activities in community ed. Chris.
Alright, so as Chip said, winter activities are underway. Everybody started up last week, or they started this week. Just wanted to touch bases with Cooper Lennox. He ended up at state again this year. It was his 5th appearance, and he ended up placing 13th and earned all conference honors. So he's winding up his career here. He also signed a letter of intent with the University of Northern Michigan. So that's pretty exciting for him.
He's had a nice career and represented Mora well.
Yep, I was going to go into swimming, but Sarah Miller did a nice job with that, so I don't need to repeat that. The fall production was held this past week. I didn't get in on this board report, plan on doing it next week, or next month, but that went well. It was a pretty good turnout, especially Friday night. Community ed, adult and youth classes are being held. We just started some more Science Explorers classes. Just wanted to touch bases real quick with Jim Belt and Ron Likens. They'll be holding their 40th rod building class beginning in January. Not sure if that was their goal to get to 40. If anybody that still wants to do that, this year might be a good year to get involved with that.
Amazing.
If you have any questions, let me know.
Thanks, Chris. All right, high school principals update.
Last night, Mr. Randy Paul and I had the opportunity to attend the Educational Support Staff Recognition event hosted by Resource Training and Solutions. Mora's honorees were Ms. Nancy Evans, Ms. Calvin Hansen from the elementary at Ms. Alicia Sanders, and Mr. Ben Titt. The keynote speaker was Kat Perkins, who was a finalist on season 6 of The Voice. She had a message of being fearless, overcoming her doubt, and to really listen to and recognize the people who have supported you along the way, such as her example of the custodian would be sweeping the floors, we pop into a rehearsal when she was practicing French horn in middle school and high school, and every day tell her she's doing such a great job, and to keep practicing, you're gonna go far. So, to recognize those people in our lives and to really commend them, and then to commend yourselves with the accomplishments that you've had in life.
If I could say, Alicia's works for transportation. She's a van driver. She just does an amazing job for the district. She pretty much works all day long, hauling kids. So.
There's a pilot program called Teen Mental Health First Aid, and we are the only school in the state that will be trying that out. We wrote a grant with SAC and Kennewick County Public Health. Basically what it consists of is our sophomores in health class, second semester, will be trained on things to look for. If they have friends that are struggling or their peers that are struggling, they'll kind of be able to pick up on some signs and refer them to counselors. So it's called Teen Mental Health First Aid. We just have this growing number of need every day with mental health of students. So we're trying to combat that by training students.
Thank you for that. Support.
Okay, elementary then.
We just finished up a couple of busy weeks with conferences and our band choir concerts. We had a Veterans Day program that it was our best turnout ever. We probably had about 200 community members. And special thanks to Troy Erickson for being our keynote. We always recognize the attendees, and we always get great feedback about that. So Bree did a wonderful job of going through the whole procedure, and special thanks to the music department as well.
Another thing that we had was our reading night. It was October 28th from 5 to 7. We had more people this year than we had had in prior years. 421 people signed in. And reading night accomplishes something for Title I that we have to fulfill. We have to do a Title I presentation and also collect the signatures as a part of the grant. And so that's why we do have families sign in, and that's why we know we had more. It's very popular. The bike giveaway is a big deal. Families do not leave until we announce that. We announced it a little bit earlier this year. They can go home now, because they all collect in the lunchroom there, but it's a lot of fun. I think next year we should expand our activities. Each one was so busy with families and engaged with kids, a lot of fun to see, so it's a great thing.
Thanks, Brenda, Randy, Nick, and Brett. All right, superintendent's update.
I probably should have done this at the beginning with Mustang Spirit, but as you had seen with the audit presentation, and the amount of times that Carl recognized Tammy and her assistance, I want to do the same thing with Mustang Spirit. She does a wonderful job of tracking those dollars. And, when I shake my finger at some people, it's usually because Tammy shakes hers at me. So sometimes I want to spend a little too much money on various things, but she reminds me where we're at to make sure that we stay on track with that as well. So Mustang Spirit for Tammy for helping out with the audit. That's an over and above thing. But again, I wanted to point out, because we do maintain that budget within about 1% on a regular basis. And that's big thanks to Tammy. So, thank you. And then also, Mustang Spirit to Kelly.
Yes.
For the canvassing meeting that you had, there was an awful lot of work that leads up to that. Kelly comes to us, she hasn't been with us very long, but she has a lot of experience in elections. And so her guidance through that process was tremendous and very appreciated by myself as well as the district office staff and the board as well. So I want to point that out as well. Which brings me to the main part of my report, is with the results of the election. As you saw in the audit, we have a little over $900,000 in the LTFM identified budget. And we have about $42 million worth of identified needs at the high school alone. So how would you like me to begin?
Well, first of all, it's good to recognize that there isn't enough to do. Would that be something that buildings and grounds, finance, or somebody should meet and talk about, or do we just go to a full board working session? Because it is a considerable amount of money, and we have a lot to consider. I personally think we need to spend it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that's just it been on what, and
Buildings and grounds.
The elder.
Yeah, but, is there a group of 3 board members?
Oh, yes,
Yep,
yes.
there's the Buildings and
yes.
Grounds Committee.
There is, and that was my question, do we wanna do it at committee level initially?
My first thought, just near the edge.
Okay.
yeah.
Fine. So, we can send out an email and set up a meeting with buildings and grounds, and Mr. Schultz.
Input is welcome.
I was just gonna say, yeah.
Well, we.
But I kind of feel like Craig Schultz does it.
Yeah.
That's why I thought, you know, it's.
If we could get your written report on that, what your thoughts are and what, then maybe we could give some input.
We can start that.
Well, if you take a look at that account for the last 3 years, we have saved some of that, about half of it each year. And then with the referendum coming up, we saved a little more. And so we have about $950,000 in there. The items that usually that come forward are about 10 million. And so there again, I can narrow it down to 10 million. And we have less than $1 million. So if you have items that you would like to see as priorities, or if you would like to have a work session to attempt to set those, you know, I can look to, or I can meet with the buildings and grounds first, and come back next month with something, but it's still gonna be a drop in the bucket, in comparison to what we need, so. We have identified items, that will be above, the long-term facility maintenance that have to do with safety and security as well. That cannot be spent from that money, so how would we address those types of things as well? You know, we were putting a lot of eggs in one basket, and felt very confident that it was going to move forward because it seemed and felt like the right thing to do. The numbers matched up much better this time with the farm to ag credit and all the various components. We put forth a lot of effort to move this forward, and since it didn't, we need to take a look at then what our short-term goals will be as well as revisit our long-term goals.
So it's kind of a segue into what I propose also is a work session scheduled to discuss what next as far as another referendum. And possibly we can have those 2 items both on our work session agenda.
Yeah, and we certainly could get together at Building and Grounds to try to take a look ahead of
Prior
time.
to that.
Some of the, yeah,
To narrow.
to narrow these somewhat, or, yeah.
But instead of 10 million, break it down to 30 million. 30 million, that would be wonderful.
So, work session, as soon as we could get on schedule, going before the end of the year,
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
Yes.
So some dates probably to throw out there for everybody to consider, and, you know, hopefully we won't give Kelly a headache trying to set up a meeting. You're so late about how many of us do that, 8, 10.
So just to clarify, did we have a Buildings and Grounds Committee first, and then a work session, and you'd like those both to happen before the next board meeting? Because
Well,
once
the
they get
next
to
board meeting is early, but then so is the end of the year right
Yeah, we
after
will be in
that.
the holidays, we're at the end of the year.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're meeting with 2 bargaining groups as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just another day at the office.
Yeah, next board meeting is December 19th, so prior to December 19th.
Okay.
4 weeks.
That's all I have, thank you.
Okay. Upcoming dates are there for you to take a look at. Truth and taxation hearing will also be December 19th at 6:30, part of the regular board meetings, so, I guess that's it, you can read the rest. Correspondence is coming around. I don't have any of the board business, since we just took care of the need to set up whole meetings, we will do that. Anybody else have any of the board business? Okay, second open forum. Would like to address the board at this time? We don't have a whole, seeing none, for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. Okay, motion by Ethan, second by Bob Johnson, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, everybody.